how do we do this collaboration, particularly in Latin America, that can show us the way that is still kind of impinging on them today. So here is Markku Wilenius, your traveling futurist, and today we're going to talk about the role of Latin America in the future of the world. You see, Latin America has some really precious assets. So with those assets, it can, in the future, contribute to the world even much more than it has done in the past. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. First of all, biodiversity of that continent is unlike anywhere else in the world. It comprises 60% of the whole global biodiversity. So 60% of all species, all kinds of living organisms are actually living in South America. And even more than that, there is also a huge asset in terms of the water. It contains almost 1/3 of the global water supplies, and it also stands for a significant amount of global forestry and arable land, something like 30%. When we think about the history, a lot of those type of food stuff that we are enjoying today globally originates from Latin America. Potatoes, they came from the hills of Andes and then spread later throughout the world, actually helping a lot the other part of the world, particularly Europe, to build its kind of a sustainability of its diet on the level that it was able to jump into modernization and industrialization. Vanilla, which is being used all over the world, probably the most popular spice we have on earth right now, also came originally from Mexico. And you could continue this list almost endlessly. So it has provided a lot already to the world. But when it comes to the future, we need to think about that we are in a very specific context. We are now endangering basically the existence of human being on Earth because we have been messing with our environment, with our climate, to the extent that it's questionable whether there is going to be a human life after this century. And that means that we, as a humankind, we need clearly to shift to another mode. We need a turning point. And this turning point will come, I believe, from understanding much more how we actually collaborate with nature instead of just extracting from them, which has been the case of modernization. We're building the industrial societies, using minerals, using natural resources of all kinds, but actually plundering them at the same time because we have not thought about the consequences, and we have been very short-sighted when we have built the material basis of our current societies. Now, this obviously has to change, and what enables that change is that we start to understand more clearly about the consequences of our action. So, and when it comes to this collaboration with the nature, we need to think that, well, while we are taking what we need from the nature, we need to give back to the nature, actually even more. So we need to take care of the nature, especially because the situation with most of the ecosystems in the world today is that they have been brought into very, very dire situation. We have created a lot of destruction, and we have the sixth wave of extinction going on when it comes to the species, and so forth and so forth. And then we have almost like a runaway climate change, which is already changing the weather patterns all around the world. So which means that a lot of things has to be done. So what to do? First of all, we need to learn from nature. We really need to learn from nature. We need to be much more understanding how the nature actually operates and build our systems, our cultural and technological systems around that intelligence that we find that is existing in the nature. And I believe that there are some hidden assets, particularly in Latin America, that can show us the way, how to deal with the nature, how to deal with the natural organism. And in fact, there is a lot of research going around in the different part of the Latin America currently, as elsewhere as well. But because Latin America has this very special history and very special quality of its assets, it might be the continent that will stand for and start to show how do we do this collaboration, how do we tap into the intelligence of the nature. Because only then we can start to be able to bear the consequences of our own action. And we can start something that actually replenish our resources and the resources of the nature. Of course, today there is a long way to go that, but we know also that a lot of those cultures that actually knew how to do that has come from Latin America. A lot of indigenous people, cultures, practices have actually their origins in Latin America. So there is a lot to learn from there, how to deal with nature in such a way that it not only does good for the human being, but it does good also for the nature. Because this is exactly the riddle that we have to solve moving forward in this century. And not only that, but we also need to do it very fast. We really need to be fast because we have unleashed something which is like a dragon, like a bit like a beast, and there is a Pandora's box that has been opened, and now we have to sort of reclaim our control to our own systems and tame that dragon and put things back to the Pandora's box, because otherwise, of course, the world will go on and all that it's got minus humans, because we're gonna become extinct if we continue the way that we have done this industrial society type of the development. Then to look for the inspiration that we need to make that turning point, the Latin America. But not only that, of course, other parts of the world as well, but the Latin America can contribute in a very specific way to this. And so if we look at some of the developments there a bit closer, we can see that already some interesting things have happened. Let's take, for instance, Brazil, and they started already back in 1970s after the oil crisis. They started to look for alternative ways to run their engines and the cars and trucks and so forth. So they started to create bioethanol, and then later on they were able to devise these multiflex engines that were able to use ethanol up to 100%. Now this bioethanol is of course not deriving from the oil, it's deriving from the plants. And that is just the one example how one country could kind of massively shift its course. And today Brazil has very ambitious strategies around how they can keep the transport emissions low, and in the future even much lower, which is kind of far ahead for any other country that has been struggling to push down their transport emissions. I would also say that when it comes to Latin America, the foremost importance is that they build on democracy, they build on sound institutions, and they have to root out the corruption, which is rampant in many of the Latin American countries. Not all of them so much, but quite a few of them. Actually, it's number one sort of a disease that impedes the development towards the right way. Because what corruption does, it actually helps the current system just to repeat itself. And the vested interest inside the system, they keep their positions without letting anything new to come in. And we need to have this flow within the society. But as long as there is a corruption, there is also issues like problems of inequality, problems of poverty, because corrupted societies cannot tackle those issues simply because there are too many people that are looking, and institutions inside and organizations that are just looking for their own interest. And so the society as a whole cannot be working for the best to improve conditions and welfare and well-being of their people. With that, we have to understand it's a long tradition that actually we can trace it back to the times of colonialization that did so much bad for the Latin American societies and left them with these high inequalities that is still kind of impinging on them today. But they can also get out of that. They can make the difference. And the countries like Costa Rica has clearly shown that they can stop the past, so to say. They can make a break, they can disrupt, and they can take a different path. And Costa Rica, for instance, did that simply by abolishing the army at the end of the 1940s and putting that money into education and health. And the rest is history. They were able to divert from this vicious path of so many Latin American countries, of internal struggles, authoritarian regimes, and instead they were able to establish a strong democracy. They were able to establish a society that provides the basic needs for its people. A stable society also attracts people, it attracts investment from abroad and so forth. So all of those goodies comes once you are able to stabilize the democracy and the well-being of the people. As I said in the beginning, Latin America has a great potential to contribute to the future of the world because its magnificent natural and cultural assets. But the level on which it is able to perform, to contribute, depends highly how it can organize itself as countries with a strong democracy, strong rule of law, and strong idea of the common purpose. And only then they can start to make use of the real potential that they have, which is the richness and the close connection to the nature. Subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends and learn more about the future.